do that a lot.
I won't do that.
You'll sit there and do that.
All right.
And I don't like that.
Okay, that's what you don't like. Okay.
That's what I don't like. There we go.
Okay.
But I love you.
I know.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a strange feeling some of this might appear in the intro. Well, welcome to the Ask Anything podcast, because some things are better said than read. My name is Peter LaRufa, and today I have with me my wife, Sarah. And we decided that we wanted to answer some questions that were submitted recently on our way back from South Carolina when we were coming back from Thanksgiving. I threw up an Ask Anything thing on Instagram and said to submit questions for either me or for Sarah or for both of us. And we love the questions that we got. We had a lot of fun answering them. But there were two in particular that I thought would be helpful to discuss together. And I remember back when I was telling you that I wanted to do this, you were like, yeah, I'll do that with you sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't something you were against. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't, I've not dragged her in here kicking and screaming.
No, because we had so much fun doing the videos after Sunday service.
We did.
During COVID, during
People
quarantine. Yeah.
every once in a while still ask me, like, are you guys going to ever get back
Yeah.
into post-sermon
here it
videos?
is.
Here it is. This
This
is
is what we're giving you.
Yeah, this is it. One of the questions was this: what's the best mothering advice you can give? Which always, I don't like best, favorite. I don't like those questions. I feel a lot of
Right.
pressure with those questions. What's your favorite movie? Really? Of all the movies ever?
Right. And that
Favorite
could
action
change.
movie. And it can change, right?
As
So,
new ones come out. And
but anyway, it's how I was asked, what's the best mothering advice you can give? And I think there was a smiley face on it. And you said something like, I don't know if this is the best mothering advice, but it's the advice that comes to mind on an 8-hour car drive. And you said, know and love Jesus. And then between the ages of 1 and 10, focus on instruction more than relationship. And then between the ages of 10 and 20, focus on relationship more than instruction. And that's something that we've said to others, and we've said that's what we've ended up
Right.
doing.
we've
So let's-
seen a lot of fruit from that.
Yes, I
So
think
far.
we've seen a lot of fruit. Right. We should also say that, like, we're totally in the middle of this. We're not on
So we
these, like,
humbly answer this question.
yeah, we're not on as parenting experts at all. At all. It was just you asked for the best mothering advice you
Don't
could
look
give.
for a book.
And she, yeah, exactly. Podcast, yes. Book, no. Best mothering advice that she could give, and that's what you got. And that's based on our experience. And I would say, let's first focus on this. You said know and love Jesus. And I think some people could be like, well, duh. Yeah, I know. That's the Christian answer. When you say know and love Jesus, what are you picturing? Help me understand. What's coming to your mind when you said know and love Jesus? You're not just saying, be a Christian.
Right.
What are you saying when it comes to mothering? Why did you think to say know and love Jesus?
Because I think that parenting philosophies will come and go. The wisdom that we glean from different generations will change, but the Word of God doesn't. And Christ, the hope and the grace that we find in Christ and the gospel is really what gets you through the hard days. And knowing His Word will help you navigate just building a foundation of principles in how you
Right.
parent, because every family's different. It's different individuals with different life circumstances. And so I think on the practical level, there isn't going to be a one size fits all except for God's Word.
Right. And before, how you had said, I forget how you said it, parenting philosophies come and go.
Yeah.
But our identity in Christ,
Right.
the Word of God stands forever, right? The grass withers, the flower fades, but the Word of God stands forever. And so it's important that we're rooted in something that's not going to change. And not only parenting philosophies change, but your role as a parent changes.
Right.
Like, we just celebrated our oldest 18th birthday.
Right.
And I'm not saying you stop being a parent when your kids become adults, but if your identity and your value that you, or the way you value yourself or your role in life is so caught up in a kid or having kids, that is meant to be a temporary season in life. When those kids leave the nest, you need to have something else to fall back on
Right.
when that job is over or over being your primary role in life.
Right.
I think it's especially important because, I don't know, maybe I don't think I've ever asked you this, but this is something that I was just thinking. I feel like, especially within conservative Christian circles, parenting, And parenting in a godly way is certainly something that we want to do. But I think particularly for moms, they wrestle with that being their sole identity, the center of their life, maybe more than dads do. I leave the home, I go to a job, I have things, other things are vying for my time and affections that remind me I'm a father, but I'm not just a father. But I think for moms, that role of being a mother, that role of making sure that since you're, at least in our family context, you're the primary caretaker, you're the one providing for them. When we homeschooled, which we'll talk about later, you're the one who is pouring into them and educating them more than me. And so I think knowing and loving Jesus is particularly important for moms because, I mean, you don't want your role as a mom to become your all and all.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that's something that I think is important to think through as parents, but especially as a mom. Okay. And then the next thing you said was between the ages of 1 and 10, focus on instruction more than relationship. And then between the ages of 10 and 20, relationship more than instruction.
That sounds like it's like, don't have a relationship
Have
with
zero
your baby.
relationship until they're 10. They're
That's
not
not
worth
what
it.
we-
It's just
that's
not
not
worth
what
it.
that means.
It's not even fun. No, I'm kidding.
I mean,
So what does it mean?
well,
What comes
yeah,
to your
and this
mind?
is like brushing with a very broad stroke
Right.
because everybody has different experiences, but typically, the baby, the toddler, the young children, not all the time, but most of the time, they're sweet, they're cute, they're cuddly, and you can make them happy. It's so, you can just develop this really sweet relationship and just make them happy. And sometimes it's easier to keep them happy than it is to instruct them and teach them the way that they should go. And then when they become less cuddly and sweet and cute, and they become bigger and harder and more vocal, then we kind of switch to that instruction when really relationship at the preteen and the teen stages is so vitally important.
Right. And it's almost like you pay up front and at least what we've seen is we did the hard work up front. And it's not that we didn't enjoy parenting up front, but we did the hard work of instruction and discipline up front and reap the rewards on the back end.
Right.
Because we did that up front.
Right.
And so to focus on instruction in the younger years, teaching, the first word we taught Justin, do you remember what it was?
It was no.
It was no, right.
Well, we
And-
tried mom and dad, and
Yeah, right. So that didn't really work. So we just went with
we'll
no.
just go with no.
I think then it was dad also.
I do too.
I think it was dad. So, but teaching him no. And so do you remember he his pudgy little hand reaching over for the floor lamp? I use this in some conference illustrations sometimes
Because
as
he
well.
liked to pull it down on himself.
He loved to pull the floor lamp down on himself, right? He was just that kid. He still does this. No, he doesn't still do this. But he would reach over and we would say no, and then he would stop. Now, what we could have done was move the floor lamp. We could have decided that the lamp was going to move into a different room for the time being. I'm not even saying that's wrong to do, but since we were focusing on instruction, we would like our lamps where they were, and we would rather take the hard, necessary road, or we would rather do the hard and necessary work to teach him that no, that lamp's going to stay there and you're not going to touch it. But lots of times
And most people love their lamps to stay where they are.
Right.
So we're going to be in other people's homes and in other places. And so
Right.
lamps just need to stay.
Lamps just shouldn't be constantly touched by your
Right.
pudgy little hand. And so over and over again,
Right.
we would have to say no. He would do it again. He would give us a look. And we'd, spank
Right.
his pudgy little hand. And he would cry. We would hug him, and then he would do it. But, that's hard work. I do understand parents saying, this isn't working. This isn't worth it. I've had to do this 6, 7, 8 times. It's not getting through. But I think if you stick with it, and I'm not speaking for every parenting situation, I think it's worth sticking with because you want to be able to have those easy relationships later on in life and not have to be wrestling with the same things that you could have been wrestling with earlier. And then I know there's something that I've said before, which is the relationship trumps the issue.
Right.
The relationship trumps the issue. And so what that means is particularly, now I'm talking about really preteen and teen years. So let's go from 10 to 20. I remember a situation in particular where we've been very blessed with our kids. I think we've had a good. It hasn't always been easy, but we've had by God's grace, a very good experience in raising them, and we're still raising them. But there was one particular.
So maybe it'll change.
So right, but there was one. No, it's not like karma. We're not. No, that's not how it works. But anyway, there was one particular time when there was an issue that we dealt with that involved some deception that had come to light, and we came down hard on this particular child because we really care. Again, because relationship is so important. Relationships can't exist without trust.
Right.
And I need to know that when I'm not looking, you're doing the right thing.
Right.
And so we come down. It's not so much about what you did, but the fact that you were caught in the way that you were caught and the way that this deception manifested itself. That's really not cool. And so we came down pretty hard, at least in LaRufa world, with a consequence that was probably the biggest that this child had ever had. And it was a really, really hard time. But the next day, I decided, and I had to lean in to do this because the relationship trumps the issue. I decided to take this child out to hang out. And child looked back at me as if I thought I'm in trouble. And it's like, well, yeah, you are. There has been a consequence, but you're still my child. I'm still your father. That hasn't changed. So now it's not like you have a consequence and now it's going to be weird also for a couple of days, just because the relationship trumps the issue. We've dealt with the issue. We've given you a consequence, but we still have a relationship. And I want to make sure that the relationship that we have is not based on your good behavior or bad behavior. It's based on the fact that you're my daughter, you're my son. And so that's what I mean when I say the relationship trumps the issue. We try our best to not let issues affect our relationship. We try to keep them as separate as possible. Would you agree?
Yeah.
You look like you were going to say something.
And then I forgot it.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, you just jump right in if you do remember it.
Well, it's a hard thing to do, though, when you're in conflict with somebody to lean into. And I think it took me a lot of practice because fear can kind of take hold. And there's this mindset of, if I show you love and grace, it won't make you see the seriousness of your sin.
Right.
When, that's not what God does with us. Mm-hmm. And you're never going to be drawn towards change when you're constantly under condemnation and shame. So
right.
To be brought back into relationship, for the relationship to be made right immediately is hard, but it's we've seen just so many good things come out of it.
Yeah. You said that's not the way God deals with us, so I was thinking Paul says in Romans it's his kindness that leads us to repentance.
Right.
And
which goes against my parenting instinct.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots in the Bible that goes against my parenting. I mean, James chapter 1, which says the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. I always think, but right there, that's a problem.
Right.
Yeah, but I have to make sure that they know how serious this is. Yeah, I have to make sure. Yeah, but this is different. But I know it says the wrath of man won't produce the righteousness of God, but maybe this time it will, or maybe this time it's necessary. When in reality, that
this
anger.
This is different.
Yeah, this is different. God did not know that He did not consider
right.
my 4 children. And so that's obviously foolish. And so, yeah, I think it's important to focus. I like what you said about focusing on instruction in the younger years so that you can reap the benefits of relationship in the older years. But still, I feel like there are people who would be listening right now who would say, yeah, I did that. And I still wrestled with relationship in the older years. Or, I wrestled. I
sure.
fought tooth and nail to make sure that I was parenting as best as I could, and I was in it. I was not just laid back. I wasn't trying to just be super gentle and kind. I tried my best, and I think it's important. We're not saying this is not an if-then statement.
This is not a formula.
Right.
There are no formulas.
There is 0 formulas. So
Zero.
It's not if you focus on instruction in the younger years, you'll have a relationship in the older years.
Right. Well,
this
go back to 1. Know
and love
love Jesus, because there's no formula, and you can't produce something.
Yeah.
But to know and love Jesus, that's just what's going to keep your head above water during those difficult parenting years.
Right.
Which might come about because God is going to use that time in that child's life, or God is going to use that time in your life to cause you to trust him more and to lean on him more for strength and endurance, you know.
Right. And so we're speaking about parenting. I just want to be clear. Generally speaking, general axioms, right? That's what Proverbs is. They're general truths, right? Eat too much honey and you will vomit. How much is too much? You'll know when so there's general truths that are presented here. So we're saying generally, or Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he will not depart from it. That's a general axiom. It's a proverb. It's not a promise, but generally speaking, this is generally true. And so generally speaking, we're saying know and love Jesus, focus on instruction in the younger years, and then focus on relationship in the older years. Don't be tempted to reverse that because we found it to be beneficial to do instruction first and then relationship.
Yeah.
So another question about parenting is, how did you decide how to school your children between all the options given? And so let's first talk about our schooling background. So
Sure.
I went to half-day nursery school, then I went to public school from kindergarten to third grade. And then my parents moved me out of public school in New York City, seeing ahead where I was going to be headed and what we were zoned for. The schools we were zoned for were really, really, really rough academically, rough socially, pretty violent places. My high school actually doesn't exist anymore. So they put me into Catholic school, not so much for Catholicism, but really more because of the education that I could get there. So I had Catholic school from 4th grade straight through 8th grade, the end of middle school, and then I went to a Catholic all-boys high school from 9th to 12th grade. That if you're listening in the Northern Kentucky area, the more I hear about CovCath, the more it sounds like my high school experience. How about you?
I attended Christian private school until 4th grade. And then from 4th grade to 12th grade, I was homeschooled. So different schooling backgrounds.
So we have very different school. We also have very different opinions of those seasons in our life. I loved high school.
You loved high school.
Loved high school. 4 of the best years of my life.
So weird.
Loved it. It was just, I'm not saying it was always easy, but yeah, that's not a down time for me. Where you were like,
it was not that.
Punch me in the face. I never want to live through high school again. Anyway, so then when we first got married, when we first got married, we were planning on having Justin when we had Justin, but God had different plans, and so we had Justin. And so now all of a sudden we're thinking through schooling options.
But homeschooling was never on the table.
Yeah, we decided we didn't want to do.
And not even that. It's not like we had a sit-down discussion of, do you want to do this? It just wasn't ever something that we had put on the table.
Right. I was largely unfamiliar with it. You had been through it.
Didn't have a desire.
And just didn't have a desire
to do it.
To do it. And so Justin went to kindergarten in public school, half-day kindergarten, which we loved.
Wonderful.
But then we were looking ahead and we realized how long his school day was. I was working in student ministry at the time. And so time together as a family is really, really important to us. And what I started noticing is, you know what? My schedule ramps up when kids are off from school, right? That's when I'm taking a 5-day road trip called Quad Quest. So that's great. I can get the students to come with me, but then I'm not going to be with my son for his fall break or during the summer or during other school breaks when life usually for families calms down. My life ramped up. And so we valued.
And you were home a lot. You were home a lot in the mornings and out a lot in the evenings.
Right. I could be home a lot in the mornings. I have the flexibility to do that, but then it's usually in the evenings or after school hours when I would be. My work would be ramping up as much as possible. And so the primary reason we decided to homeschool was not because we didn't like his public school experience. We loved it.
No, it was the flexibility and freedom with our time.
Flexibility and time, to be able to spend that time as a family.
And I was familiar enough with homeschooling, obviously, that it wasn't incredibly daunting to kind of step into that.
And so we did that with Justin through his 8th grade year, and we did it with the rest of the kids as well. So they're about 3 grades apart, and so we were homeschooling all the kids. Did you like it?
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved the flexibility.
Yeah.
I loved contributing what little I contributed. I don't think I contributed a lot,
Yeah.
but I enjoyed what that meant for our family and was super thankful for the sacrifice and the labor of love that you gave to our family to be able to make that happen.
And it had its pros and cons, but overall, for those 9 years, it was working really well for us. The pros outweighed
Far
the
outweighed the
cons.
cons.
Yes.
Yeah, and but then
Until it didn't.
until it didn't, right? And it didn't. I think it was slowly, just slowly. It was like, okay, Justin's getting a little older. I'm now seeing a little bit, nothing outlandish, but a little bit of a relationship tension between you and him that's manifesting itself during school. And I had always said, I don't know if people agree with this, but I've always said I can outsource your education, but I can't outsource your mom. And so I really, really care about the relational dynamic between you and Justin. And I also care about his education. And I didn't want the relational dynamic to be something that was always so tense, where it was, I would come home from work and dad's home and everybody's somewhat happy to see me. Where for you to take off the school hat and put on the mom hat, that's kind of hard to do. And that's not a reason not to homeschool. This is just something that I was noticing. And just the way that Justin's wired and his desire to be around other kids and to be involved in other things. And Justin, I think, does well with a healthy sense of competition in keeping up with the Joneses. Not really morally speaking, but just like he does well on teams. He does well with people. I thought he would do well in school. And so we made the switch to put him in public school in 9th grade. And so he is about to graduate, Lord willing, high school. And he spent his high school in 9th grade. No, not his high school in 9th grade. That would be terrible. He spent his high school in public school. And yeah, that's when we made that switch. And so the question was, how did you decide how to school your children between all the options given? I think we took it year by year. We never said we're going to do this forever. We said year by year we made a new commitment. Do we want to continue homeschooling? Do we want to continue it for all the kids? Did it work? And for several years we said yes. And then just as time went on, we thought, you know what, I think it'll be best for these 3, but not this one. And then we said, I think it'll be best for this one, but not these 3. And that was actually, Jonathan was the one that we kept at home. And we sent Silas and Emma to school. So there was Silas, Emma, Justin. And then we were going to send everybody to school. And then COVID hit and everybody came home, which was just amazing because it was COVID.
Yeah. And we got to see what rock stars teachers are.
Oh, gosh.
Because
we were very
our
blessed.
kids were in our home doing their lessons. And it was just so hard, not ideal. And yet it happened. They made it work.
Talk about the transition of sending Justin to school and that decision. I remember us making that decision together, but when you describe it a lot, you describe it as me kind of leading you to that to some degree. I don't remember you being super scared about it, but what do you recall? Really?
Oh, yeah.
Really scared?
I cried.
Well, yeah, you're a mom and it's kids. And
It is. But I think overall, we never viewed. So, I mean, you could basically say in our area, there's 3 types of ways to educate your kids. There's homeschool, private school, and public school.
Right.
And we never thought there was one that was best. They're just all different. And when we kind of started to seeing that maybe homeschooling wasn't best for us at that time, and that public school was our other option, I think that there was. I mean, just to be transparent, I think that there was a part of me that I'd been homeschooling for so long that it felt really odd, the idea of not teaching one of the kids or all of the kids. But it was just Justin at that time. And that was something that you helped me kind of put off that. And I didn't need to feel guilty for that. This was, another good decision.
Right. We weren't making the switch because you had failed at homeschooling.
Right.
In fact, you had prepared them very well for that transition as best as we could.
But I think we as parents can carry a lot of that unnecessarily, that guilt that if you make the wrong, this could be wrong, this decision, and then completely mess up their life, or you're being selfish or whatnot.
Right.
But I also there was a lot of fear in the unknown. Now, at that time, it wasn't unknown to me. I viewed it as known. Like, this probably will happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Despite both of our inexperience with public schools and
Seriously.
public schools in Northern Kentucky.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
not only did I never go to one, and you never went to one,
Right.
but we had also not been part of the public school system in 9 years.
Right. Well, and then do you remember it occurred to me? I was like, every opinion I have on these schools comes from people who are not involved in them.
Right.
It's from
And
people
believe me,
who
you
are
can
like,
find an article to back up any opinion that you
Absolutely.
want to have or develop.
And so that's when we decided to let's go tour schools. Let's talk to
Right.
people who are actually working in these schools. And we toured a few different schools, and
And I was still nervous.
yeah, it
'Cause
didn't
you
like,
just don't
wow,
know.
this is amazing. No,
But
there's still,
what did we keep coming back to?
we will not ever make a decision out of fear.
Right. Or the unknown.
Right. And so if the driving factor, and this takes a lot of discernment, right? Like we have to really think about, like, for you to not touch a hot stove because you're scared of getting burned, there's a little bit of wisdom there. But if
Right.
the driving force behind this decision to do something or not do something is fear, we need to come up with a better reason. And so if the only reason to not send them to school, to public school, was going to be fear, we decided that wasn't reason enough to not do it.
Right.
We did not want to do something out of fear.
Right.
Nor
we
do
were
we
only
want to
going
homeschool
to
out of fear.
we are only going to allow in facts into our decision making.
Right,
If it wasn't a fact and we didn't know it for sure,
right.
then we weren't going to use that to make our decision. And that was helpful. It felt really wrong in the beginning. But it ended up being just a key factor in being able to explore these new options and to walk down these new roads.
Right. And I think it's also important, the switch that we made, it's not like now we've seen the light.
No.
Like, oh, we shouldn't have done it. Or, I'm not thinking, oh, because we're in public school now, we should have been in public school from day one. No. Nor was I thinking that when I look at people who homeschool straight through high school, I'm not thinking, oh, then that's what we should. This is what worked for us. I was thinking about this the other day. I look at what our kids' experience would have been in public school when they were younger, and I think, oh, wow, that would have been really cool. And I look at some of what I know people who homeschool through high school, and I think, oh, wow, that would be really cool.
Right.
I still can acknowledge that even though we've chosen to do what we're doing, we're missing out on certain things that are just available through the other methods.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, I really miss being able to go on vacation whenever we want.
Yeah, so I was literally convicted because I was like, should we send them to school? And I was like, but the prices for vacations are really expensive. And I'm
Right.
like, I'm
Yeah.
about to make a decision about my kids' education based on off-peak beach house prices. And that's probably not awesome
Yeah.
decision-making
Right.
methods. So yeah, I miss the flexibility. I miss the there's a lot I miss from it, but I think it's worked out really great. We haven't regretted it.
No.
It's hard. This year we have a middle schooler for the first time. That's pretty hard. But we still think the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah, for sure. We've had the hard has not been bad. It's
No.
been a good hard.
Right,
We've all grown a lot and we've learned a lot through those hard things.
right.
And these are just hard stages of life. So to say it was just the schooling, it's like, no, it wasn't, because we
Right.
homeschooled through some of those stages and
Absolutely.
it was just as hard. But I also can say that every single fear that I chose to set aside has never actually happened.
Come to fruition.
Right. And that was like,
Which
that's
is the case
really
for
freeing.
most things we worry about. Like I've been telling people that I think since COVID, it just occurred to me, or I read it somewhere, like, have you ever thought about the fact that most of what you've worried the most about in life has never come to pass? So the
Yeah.
things that you're most worried about, if you look back on them, most of them, maybe even all of them, haven't come to pass. They've just been, they've been fruitless. You'll never get that time back. And so, yeah, to your point, everything we were concerned about or worried about hasn't been a thing, and we've been grateful for the opportunity.
And so that's what we're going to do until
So
we're
we feel like
told-
we shouldn't.
Until we feel like we shouldn't. Right.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh,
That was easier than I thought.
yeah. It's not that hard.
It's
It's
fun.
really easy when it's a conversation. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks for joining us. Once again, you can follow me on Instagram, and there's a link in my bio there where you can click on the Ask Anything link, and you could submit a question anytime or take a look for the Ask Anything story to be posted usually on Mondays or Tuesdays, and I look forward to hearing from you then.